saw a thumbs up. So this is our first workshop where we are in the auditorium and we are being streamed and recorded, which is very exciting. Tonight we're going to talk about developing the community engagement and linkage plan that we've had some discussion about in the coherent governance workshops. In preparation for this meeting, so if you recall in the last workshop, Linda was like, don't start a plan yet. I had already started one. So this is just like a really rough draft of what it might look like with kind of mapping out what we have traditionally done with the addition of either like a key communicator group or additional linkages. And so I was hoping that this would just kind of generate some discussion around like what board members wanted to commit to and could commit to, and what board members had envisioned this plan looking like, and what our formal communication might look like, or engagement with the community might look like. So I'll just kind of walk through the rough outline of the very rough draft of the plan. So there's kind of a rationale for the board engaging the community, and I linked to GC3 in the board job description. The board must engage the community in the work of the board in order to faithfully represent, lead, and serve the citizens of the school district of La Crosse. I point out that this document outlines the formal methods that the board has committed to engaging with the community. As elected officials, individual board members can meet with their constituents, but with the caveat that no board member exercises authority over the district, and board members meeting outside the methods outlined in this document should just exercise caution to not speak or act on behalf of the board. And then that the president is granted authority to speak on behalf of the board as outlined in GC4 officers' roles. So then it's just broken down into different ways that we engage. So there's the ongoing communication through email, phone, mail, school board meetings, and public comment. And then our Board of Education linkages that we have traditionally held with staff linkages pulled out, student linkages, district-wide parent committee linkage, local legislators linkage, cultural community linkage. And then at the bottom is an idea. The key communicators group is one way of adding additional connection to the community. And then a final statement of like, the board can do other things as needed, not outlined in this document. And one of the things I was thinking we should consider is, I personally like the idea of the key communicator group because it allows us to connect with people from across the community. But if that isn't something that gels with the board, there is the option of doing targeted linkage meetings, and some of the ideas are outlined on this second paper with the yellow highlighter. You can see all of our regular historic linkages and then the addition of 4. These could be anything if we wanted to go that route and stick with something that's familiar. Youth serving organizations, meeting with local government, meeting with the business community, or meeting with local educational institutions. So when we had met and discussed kind of what this would look like, there was lots of ideas and excitement and a desire to do something. These are just ideas of what that could be, and I can take guidance, and this is a board document, so it's, I'm not the king of this. I'll open it up to feedback if you have any, or thoughts on different methods or modes for connecting with the public.
I think one of the things we have to think about when we connect with the public is going to them instead of them coming to us all the time. I think that that makes a statement in and of itself. I think our community engagement planning is extremely crucial right now as we are working to build trust with the community. So putting effort into creating a plan around that is a good idea, so I appreciate the work you've put into this. Again, having just received it, I need to take some time to digest all of it. But clearly you've put a lot of thought and work into it, so I appreciate that. I think the other thing that's always the question that goes with this is, what are these discussions about? What do we discuss? What are the questions that we ask them? How do we engage them in such a way to really facilitate a conversation that really gets true input from the community?
Yeah, and on the key communicators group idea. And so in our workshop with Randy and Linda was opposed to the idea of having district administrators present and wanted it to be, her vision of the right way to do this would be to have it be board members only. What I thought was useful potentially is having this key communicator group serve kind of two main purposes. So one is if district administrators were present and presenting on a topic. And so three that I thought of, very broad. It's like a teaching and learning session, a student support services session, and then a third one that could be facilities or local partnerships or budget, something that the community would want information on. So with district administrators present, presenting information on challenges and successes around teaching and learning, the community would learn, or those present in the community, key communicators group would learn more about the district than maybe they have before. And they would share with their networks the information learned. So that's one purpose. The second purpose would be we could receive feedback from them around those issues discussed. So one of the things I was thinking was it could be a format where administrators or experts present information around a topic. And then there's some small group discussion with the key communicator group facilitated by board members, where board members are receiving feedback. So we have that kind of two-way communication with the people in this group that could hopefully spread more understanding in the district about these issues and challenges around these things, while also giving us an opportunity to hear from some of these key identified people.
I appreciate your thought in that. I mean, as far as Randy and Linda's recommendation, at the end of the day, our governance structure is what we make it. And it doesn't have to be exactly what they sell. And so, I mean, I think the beauty of the way the board had governed in the past and continues to govern is what works for us, not just what matches the book that Randy and Linda wrote. And I think that there's, because sometimes there's very good reasons for us to do it just a little bit differently. So I don't feel as tied to Linda's recommendation. I kind of prefer the direction you're going with it, because that's what works in this community. And I think we have that flexibility to make it what we didn't just buy a recipe card from Randy and Linda and just have to follow that. We have to give our own thought and consideration to what our community and our district needs.
Yeah, I think we've done that in the past too. I mean, like they tell you should really talk to your faculty or your staff. And well, how else are we going to hear from them if we don't schedule these meetings? And I think when I've attended those, we've gotten good information. I mean, you have to winnow and sift, as course, but and then as well as the students as well that we have with the high schools each year. They're very, and Polytechnic, and they're very telling as well. So I think those ideas are key.
So, I mean, with the addition of a group or linkages, there's more meetings and there's more work that the board has to take on. And that's another thing I think we should consider as we think of what we have been doing, and if we're going to continue doing that, and if we add anything, like, is it like doable and sustainable for the board? and like how, the specifics of like how we would meet and when it would be. We've struggled with staff because it's during, you know, like 3 o'clock right after school and it's during the workday, but some of these other groups we may be able to reach after 5. I don't know, it kind of depends on availability of groups. Are you feeling like, you know, adding linkages would be, I don't want to say easier, but like less effort for the board to take on to meet with additional folks in the community? The key communicator group would be kind of considerable effort on the part of the board just to identify members of the group and share information with the wider community about it, and then plan out the whole event and who can be there and that sort of thing. Is that something board members have thoughts on?
What is the expectation in terms of, are all board members supposed to be at all linkages, or we try to, board members should make it to at least X number of linkages, there should be X number of board members present at a linkage? What has the practice been in the last few years?
Juan, do you remember what the recommended, I mean, like 2 or 3 at a
Try to have
linkage?
3 board members present.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what we have historically done, you know, meeting with the staff, there's quite a few schools each year. And then there's the students, cultural community linkage, district-wide parent, it gets to be a lot. You know, the key communicator group might just be 3 more meetings a year, it might be 4 more meetings, if you add more linkages.
I mean, there's 11 without the key communicators.
Yeah, which is a lot, in addition to all the board meetings and other commitments.
Well, and I think part of the challenge too is to get these people to come, or go, when we go to them, to get them to attend, because there's nothing more frustrating than going to them and nobody shows up.
And I think that's what comes back to is, how does the discussion with them play out? If it's them listening to us, or tell them about all the great stuff we do, well, there's a few people that show up, but again, I think people want to have meaningful dialogue. And so how do we conduct these in such a way that, because if people knew they had the chance to really provide input in a genuine way, I think people would be more inclined to participate. But if it's just to sit and listen to a lecture on how we do something and hope you support it and tell all your friends about it, I know you're not proposing that. I think that that makes it harder.
And maybe it's presenting that before we go or whatever, so they know what to expect when they get there. And that they're going to hear some small portion of some updates, but then also that we want feedback on that and more. I know we've usually done the 3 questions for the structured linkages that we have, which I'm kind of, the idea where tonight, or if you give it to them before and they can look at it, you get a lot more response than you just pop the question on them that night. People don't have a chance to think about it. So.
I think it's also important to remind, especially the new groups that we may be creating, that it is not a decision-making body. It is an advisory body,
That too.
because I think that can also cause concern if that group believes that they have decision-making authority when in fact they do not. So I think we have to be clear about what is our expectation of
Yeah.
linkages, and ensuring that that is also shared and clearly explained.
Can you explain that more about the decision-making? So, I mean, we are a board and we're a decision-making board, but that's not our role in those linkages. So-
That's the point. If we
Okay,
create
okay.
new ones,
Okay.
would they think that they're a decision-making body?
Okay.
Unless we're clear.
That whole key communicator group phrase comes from the book too.
Right.
It's not my original idea. And the idea of connecting with key communicators, which I kind of hate that phrase, it feels really, whatever, but just the idea that you're connecting with strategically with people who are well connected and who are impacted by the decisions that the district is making, so you're getting good feedback. I think, you know, in an ideal world, we could have like an open forum where everybody comes and shares with us, but for the purpose of the board and receiving specific feedback, I think having more structure can help, so it just doesn't become like a come share your pet complaint with the board, because we are
Great session.
an audience.
So is there any kind of meetings that you go to, Dr. Engel, that has some of these groups there that we could somehow latch on to, or, because I don't know if like city council, county board, and township boards, I don't think they come together for any exchange among themselves, do they?
The mayor had a council for a little while. It was topical though, it was around an issue, and then it kind of disbanded, kind of after the pandemic. The county had a similar kind of vetting process for some stuff, but it was topical again. I haven't seen something, you know, exactly like this. Most charitable boards are structured in such a way to gather a cross-section of the community oftentimes, and so those are places where I can make good connections with folks, you know, that are from kind of across our community. But in terms of like a place that exists for this, I mean, a lot of your service organizations kind of function in this capacity to a certain extent, you know, the Rotaries and the JCs and the, you know, there's a lot of key communicators at those places who are, you know, seeking connection and doing good things in our community, you know, and so those are natural opportunities that already exist. You know, so, I mean, you could theoretically, you know, attend the Rotary meetings and neighborhood association meetings, get a pretty good cross-section of the city pretty quickly. Just a thought, but there isn't really a pre-existing like spot where this happens.
So there's the old adage of keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I'm not saying we have enemies per se, but there are some groups that aren't at first in line to be our biggest fans. And I'm wondering if we would want to include some types of community groups in that key communicators. Because I don't think any of those groups, even the vote no group, I don't think that they're certainly not against public education. And so how do we have a meaningful conversation with them to find areas that we have in common so that we can work together to build instead of continuing to feed that divide?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I didn't include a list of ideas of people or community groups to include in a group like this. I kind of figured, you know, school district has lists that they kind of maintain for these purposes, and then the board could also identify groups or people that they would like to hear from. But yeah, I think for the purpose of this workshop tonight, I guess I want to hear like two things. One is looking at our linkages that we've done in the past. Are we committed to continuing what we have done? And remember, this last year, we also added an elementary school linkage, a middle school linkage, and a high school linkage, in addition to what I have outlined here. I haven't included it on this. And if we are committed to doing what we have done, or if we want to, you know, remove anything, then Laura begins the scheduling process for that and just needs to hear more from us about days of the week that were available or times of the day for meeting with staff during those hours that staff are available, what works best. So, but before I kind of set off on that, are we feeling like the staff linkages, the student linkage, the district-wide parent committee linkage, the local legislators linkage, which happens every 2 years, and the cultural community linkage are ones that we would want to continue?
I think I'd be careful to change the faculty linkages and the staff linkages. The reason we added the elementary, middle, and high school general linkages was because of faculty feedback. That they felt that we had not visited their school in a while, and we also had a pandemic in there, right? So even though we were still following our schedule, faculty still felt like they wanted to have an opportunity to have their voice heard, even though their school is not on the rotation for that year. And so that's why those 3 were added. I think that it would be good for us to determine whether those were beneficial or not. And for some of those, we didn't have anybody show up. So was it because we did not communicate enough to say this is an opportunity, or is it because it was not valuable? So I think we need to think about that piece for sure. But to remove, especially the staff and student linkages, I think that would cause a lot of consternation. And it would also limit us in our ability to hear feedback that we have felt has been very promising in the past.
Yeah, and I'd agree. I think that I struggle with the 3 that we've added only because there was low participation, but it was only 1 year.
Correct.
So it's hard to know what the trends are there.
And
if it's new.
and we were trying to be responsive to the
Right.
faculty who said we want an opportunity to hear our voice or have our voice heard, even though our school is not on the rotation that year.
Other thoughts on those linkages?
Why are 4 highlighted? I know
Okay.
what I said, but
Sorry, it wasn't super clear. So I guess I was thinking of like 2 ways we could go. We could either add 4 or more, or any number of linkages. Just meet the way that we've always met with people, where we have guiding questions and we hear the feedback. Laura takes notes, and then that's it. Or, so this is like Plan B, and then this one is like Plan A.
So Plan A would have
These
10
would be-
linkages, Plan B would have 11.
Plan A would have, what is it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
7,
10.
9, 10, 11.
Student linkages are 2.
11, so Plan A would have 11, plus the 3 if we kept the elementary staff, middle school staff, high school staff, like we did this last year for the first time.
Okay.
And then the key communicators. Plan B would be those 11 plus the 3, all staff, and then these 4 highlighted, which honestly, they could be any groups. Could be 2, could be 1.
I would say, right now, one of our biggest jobs as a board is to continue to build relationships with the community. And since the 3 meetings with the staff, based on elementary, middle, and high school was not successful last year, we're going to press pause on that this year to focus a little bit more on the community. And we could revisit that elementary, middle, and high school thing in a future year if we would want to do that. We can't do everything for everybody every year, and so sometimes you have to press pause.
To me, the linkages are very prescribed, and it's clear what the purpose is because we ask the same 3 questions at everyone. Yeah, that wasn't a judgment, but with the key communicators group, what's less clear to me is what the purpose of that group would be and how they would go about doing business. Would it be run like a linkage, or would it be?
I guess I was thinking of it just being like a lecture plus discussion, where there's lecture being really light, where there's just some information potentially given by district administrators, Dr. Horsey coming in to talk about teaching and learning or something. And then that's 10 minutes. And then the rest of that hour would be feedback from the people in that group, sharing information and feedback and concerns and issues with board members around teaching and learning or the larger subjects shared. So the way I kind of imagined it would be run was like board members would facilitate we could have like guiding questions to keep the conversation focused, but the purpose would be that there's that two-way communication where we're sharing some information, we're taking time to listen, and in that listening time, there's opportunity for discussion. But it's focused like that, and that is one of my like sticky points with any sort of new plan to engage the community is like, I want it to be focused and purposeful because our time is really like limited in what we can do.
So that sounds to me like something that you would invite the general public to. Information sharing, ability to ask questions, but if we're pulling together a strategic group of key communicators in our community, I feel like we would need them to be tasked with something once they leave. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. I mean, as I think about the teaching and learning or whatever you had for the first example, you know, quite frankly, I think a really cool conversation would be talking with this group of movers and shakers in the community about how COVID has affected student performance and truancy, and how it is a struggle for every district, like huge struggle. Like truancy, I think if the public knew how bad truancy was in every district, I think their heads would fall off. I mean, it's crazy. And this is their future workforce. This is their kids. This is their neighbors. And kids that aren't engaged in school and in lower grades, they're not going to suddenly catch up when they're in 9th grade or 11th grade. So I think, you know, so I think talking to them and saying, this is a huge problem. What are your thoughts? What would you like to see happen? And ask, you know, I think maybe proposing a problem that's not an issue, maybe is a better way to say it, and asking for some thoughts on what they would like to see. Maybe that's a better way to use their time and talent versus here's how we do it. Do you agree with it? I'm not sure you're proposing that either, but that seems to be a boring conversation.
No, I was more just proposed, like the only reason to have administrators present is to like give context to the discussion. So
And I
if you're
think like
coming in
the
and you don't
truancy
know
one, for
anything
instance.
about teaching and learning, which I hope you do if you're in the discussion, right? We've invited you for that purpose. But the context is there, and then there's the added benefit of if there are really pointed questions to board members that board members cannot answer, we can ask Dr. Hersey to help us.
So I just
And I
want
only speak from experience with some of these linkages that have been tough when they focus heavily on operational things that are outside of our scope of view.
I just want to do a time check that we have about 4
Yeah.
minutes to 9 o'clock.
So I don't think we need to stay later to talk about this anymore. Please just look at this, send me your thoughts. If you don't like the direction of either of these things, we can go a different direction, but I just wanted to get the conversation started so we can have a plan before the school year starts. That's kind of my goal of a timeline on this.
Thank you for all the work to do that. That's a lot of work, and we've had a good conversation, but we got to start with something other than a blank sheet of paper, and so thank you so
Yeah.
much for all your thoughts on this.
My pleasure. All right, so we will adjourn the workshop. Thank you, everyone.